The information provided in this video is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered financial, investment, tax, or legal advice. Investing involves risk, including the possible loss of the principal. Always do your own research and consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any investment decisions. The opinions expressed are those of the host and the guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of any affiliated organizations. It's 9 a.m. We've marked our books for the week. Let's have a look at what happened in the market for the week and have a general recap. For those of you just tuning in to watch Oncopeptide, fortunately, we're not going to do that stock on Monday. We have to do a little bit more research on it, but we'll come back to you on Monday evening with an update for that stock. Right, Jeff? I was looking this week at Bitcoin. You see Bitcoin down 14%. This is what I was talking about last week about, I was watching a very interesting podcast and a guy was explaining that the correlation between Bitcoin and the market. And, he was a real pro now, but he said he started to use Bitcoin as the leader of the market. And look, these are always so hard to figure out whether they're leaders or not. But it's kind of like it got to the level. It's trading. What is it trading at the moment? 62. Let's look. 63,000 at the moment. It got to a level below anything below 64,000. There's more people in it. There's over half the people in it have unrealized losses. At
what level? Sorry,
64,000 or 65,000. Now, I don't know how you can possibly calculate this, but that's what he's actually figured out. So they're
obviously a way,
yeah. So obviously, half the people in there now are carrying unrealized losses on this. But also, I don't know if you saw a guy called Michael Saylor, who is the strategy. There's a company called Strategy Inc., which is basically just borrowed heavily from the banks, and all they've done is buy Bitcoin. Now, he said that he's never going to sell Bitcoin, but he actually sold some at 68,000. He sold to pay off preference shareholders.
You obviously have to if there's loans due, right?
Yeah, but
and remember, you're borrowing money for the bank and paying interest, and I'm sure you're not borrowing at 2%, right?
No, but he was in his level was 75,000. So that's the level that Strategy Inc. are that's their average income.
Well, the strategy is, I think it's going to borrow as much money, and if that keeps going up, I'm just going to make myself a billionaire. That's the strategy, right?
Yeah, but that's what it is. And the banks were taking the hit. The banks are going to start taking the hit now. But what the Strategy Inc. is, I wouldn't say they were the ones holding the market up, but they were just constantly buying. So if you get market dips, so I think it traded up to 125,000, and then they were buying around the 89, 92 level when it came down again, and then it goes back up to 102, 103. But as somebody famously said that if you had used your Bitcoin, say 6 years ago, to buy a pizza, it would have cost you 100 Bitcoin. If you'd held your Bitcoin, you could have bought the pizza company.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge problem that people aren't actually using it. It's like it's just why would you use it if you're gonna, as I say, 63,000 now? You're probably looking. It's the old story. You're looking in your head at the value of 125,000, and you're going, "Oh yeah, it's going to go back up again." So why would you buy a pizza with it? Get a big pizza. So it's kind of like I think it's that. Look, whether it's a leader or a follower, I'm not too sure, but
it's in that downtrend, and you're used to it. Typically, it bounces back most of the time anyway, right? From certain levels, it always does.
Well,
that's 60,000.
It was saying as well. When it hit 61,000, it's and I forget who the trader was, but he said, it was nearly a perfect call. He said when you have market conditions like this, that over half the people are in at unrealized losses, that's usually the sign of a bear. That's usually the sign of a turn. Now, he said that when it was trading 61,000, it's now up to 63. It's the old story though. It's kind of like, I don't know if you saw it during the week as well. The US has seized Iran's Bitcoin. Now, I thought Bitcoin, and someone made a very good point about this. I thought Bitcoin, the point of it is that government couldn't see what you're doing. And
I don't know how they can seize their Bitcoin.
But they actually did.
You sure?
But, positive. And he said
So sorry, if I put in there USC's Iranian Bitcoin.
Yeah. So look at Scott Besson said it. So if this is supposed to be all secret, and you know, the trader was making the point that the government obviously knows exactly who the hell owns what. We think it's all secret, but sure, look, you're talking about CIA and stuff like this. So I'm sure they can easily figure, if they can figure out what you had for breakfast, I'm sure they can figure out where your Bitcoin wallets are. Did you see it there?
Here you go. So this is in Reddit. Can somebody please explain how USA seized Iran's crypto wallets? I thought this was impossible.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. And did they any answer? Was there?
It says you keep believing they do this from exchanges. The exchange will lock your account if it finds your IP address coming from Iran. Besson didn't say which coins were seized, so he's probably just spouting a number made up by one of his underlings, which is very possible.
Yeah, it is. But well, yeah. But if the Treasury Secretary says he has it, why would he just say he has their Bitcoin? Like it's whatever. It's billions, right? But it's not trillions. It's kind of like why would you make that up when you can, when relatively speaking, if you look at what the assets the USA has, which they seized years ago, like the Bitcoin is probably hardly a talkable part of it, Well, I just thought
if they're freezing accounts, it's different, yeah.
Yeah, but that's okay. So that's interesting. So if the IP address is coming from Iran, so that's probably how they did it.
Or maybe like I suppose historically they could go back to certain whatever exchanges, like say a year ago, right? And go, can you show me any transactions when went to an Iranian IP address, right? And then they lock those accounts down.
Okay.
So it's not like Philadelphia goes to try and sell this stuff and we lock it down now, which they could. It's like they can probably look back and say.
Sure, but that also tells you. Well, that just tells me though that this whole thing is just not secret. It's like that was the whole point of Bitcoin was that it was
yes, you're right. And the problem with that was that if you didn't go through exchanges, you went through numerous exchanges that weren't regulated. How do you know your exchange wasn't going to collapse? And that was the problem. So therefore, they had to decentralize the exchanges.
Well, yeah, well, that was a massive part of the risk.
But you're right. The whole idea is that it's anonymous, right? But it's not. Then technically, it's not anonymous.
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure though you could bounce your. I'm sure there's a way if you're in Iran or you're in Ireland that you could bounce something from somewhere to somewhere to somewhere, and it goes that way. Maybe, but then you have to get the money out of the cash out of that country. But
yeah. I just think it's interesting. It just shows me that it's not this great secret thing. But you're right about the exchange thing. That was a huge risk. I remember there was an exchange formed and they started trading Bitcoin and people started putting money into it. And a trader made a very good point. He said, "I'm not worried about Bitcoin." He said, "I'm worried about the exchange." And the exchange went under because it had ridiculous.
Well, that's what I mean. It's all or nothing. So you put 5,000 in, and then your exchange goes under.
I know, yeah, it's kind of like.
But that was the problem.
That's not part of their trading strategy,
Yeah.
Well
then, yes, no. So so Bitcoin, but it is interesting. This guy believes in Bitcoin. He believes that it has to be stored in certain places, and that it'll only go back up higher. But he's trading it, so it's sort of different. Anyway.
Well, yeah, he's trading. But what happens when you're day trading? As I don't know if you don't have the discipline first, you start the day trade, you're in, out, in, out, in, out, but then you get in.
Sorry, do you shake it all about there, or
shake it all about? But then you get in, and then you say, "Oh yeah, I'm holding," and then you get in again, and then that's how you build a position up. It's quite a common thing with day traders, and that's why the 60-70% of them tend to lose money because they don't take the discipline on the downside. They don't say themselves.
I think this person mentioned to me as well. It said if you break down all the trades, 80 of them would be right, And he said just one or two or whatever, like 20%, whatever, are the ones that kind of kill you. And you can see it. I've done it. You sit there going, "Oh no, this is coming back," and it just, and I suppose really without fully understanding, where Bitcoin's uses will be, I think there's an element of power in there, right? Not talking about
power,
but power is in energy. Needed to store and even to drive to create more, and then you have to store all these wallets electronically, and I don't know. I mean,
but also it's kind of like we are 90% there on the 21 million coins. Yeah,
the
we are
20,
90% there. And if you have a value of 60 something thousand, surely the people, don't call me surely the people who were generating it when they were 78,000, there must be a cost. There must be a cost to make Bitcoin, obviously, in terms of power. So if the cost is say 72,000, you're probably, and you have your crypto warehouses and all that stuff, using the energy. Surely you're looking at it now going, okay, maybe I'll just wait, for it to go back up again. So I'll just turn these machines off, because what's the point? It's
but that's like, I suppose that's like fracking, right? If the price of oil goes down to 50,
yeah,
right, you're sitting there going, well, we can drill for oil in these places, and it's going to cost X, Y, Z, which is obviously above the price of what you get from selling the oil. So when the price goes back up, same with gold, and the price of gold goes back up, a lot of mines maybe reopen and go, now it's viable to do it.
yeah.
So same as I'm sure Bitcoin. I mean, it's certainly that's for the mining. So therefore, if you're long, Bitcoin, I think the thing was, remember, Bitcoin was, if you go back last year, the year before, technology was going up. All the large cap technology stocks, and Bitcoin was going up with it. And Bitcoin might be leading it. There's a whole, but the correlation with there is very strong, and that seems to have broken down a lot now. Where maybe it's possible that a lot of the Bitcoin, what's the gurus, Bitcoin believers, have sold out of that and moved it more into the AI stuff, and kind of feeling that that's the driver and that's where it's going. That would make sense. That would make sense.
Yeah, it would make sense. Also, you have the big SpaceX coming up now, and I just read a report there that they don't think SpaceX is going to get into the S&P when it IPOs, which is kind of interesting. I thought it would. It's for the SpaceX. It's like this. Goldman Sachs are really hyping up this, or not Goldman, Morgans especially are really hyping this up. Jamie Dimon saying he's getting all his, his whales in and all that stuff for this. There's the Saudi princes in, all that type of stuff. They're looking at an IPO price. I think it's $135 a share. But an analysis was done on it. They reckon the value of the company is actually worth half that. So the share should be IPOing for 50% of the value. Look, I've no idea. This could be what's happening, is that people are selling their Bitcoins to get into the SpaceX, because you have SpaceX, Anthropic, OpenAI.
Yeah, I don't see that at all. I think that I'm not. Yeah.
I see people.
No, it does exactly. You nailed it there in the beginning, saying this JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs and all these guys hyping it up because they're getting commissions up based off the whole thing, and the Saudi government. Of course, the Saudi government's in.
But most facial recognition now is not done by face; it's done by the back and above, obviously, because you can hide yourself from cameras. So they are using AI tools to facial recognize you from above now.
Was it not somebody with something about that back face or something?
Back face.
There was somebody developed an app with a back face.
Oh yeah. Oh no, that was Will Ferrell in what do you call it, in The Other Guys, wasn't it?
Was it? Oh yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. The wife. Remember, she was.
I'm not sure it's back face, but it was whatever. It's kind of ridiculous.
Honey, you look like a hobo. Remember the wife? Beautiful bird. Yeah. So it's kind of okay. So if the world is wife anyway,
you're probably right and stuff there, but I do think that in general, Bitcoin's been going down. I think its money's been maybe flowing more into the AI speculative AI stuff, but that's where the flows are going, right? And a lot of the AI stuff, I think John pointed out before, was certainly in the data centers where these are some firms that were actually involved in all the crypto stuff, and they moved more into that AI thing. So there is a tie over. Do
you think? I was looking at the market over the past week, and I think I'm going to be a bit careful here about buying stuff, to be honest. I think for summertime, I just think I'm just not confident that we're going to truck higher. I mean, I can see there is a natural rotation going on. Now, I'm not being a perma bear here, but I'm just saying.
But again, you see, we could have this conversation 6 months ago or 3 months ago when the Iranian war, the Russian war, and if you were just broadly long the S&P, we'd be having this conversation. I think it's going to go lower. We could have this conversation over the last 5-10 years. You know,
I don't think,
since
yeah, but
we started printing money, and you know, after
I don't think
COVID,
it's going to.
everything.
I'm not saying it's going to go lower, right? I'm not saying that. So I'm not saying short sell or crap like that. Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely not. I just think that we've reached a. I do understand what you're saying, but we have reached a level that is just insane. Like it's just, and here's the thing, and this is where you're probably right. For the past 10 years, all any traders have been doing, and I use the word traders in its broadest term, has just been buying the dips. Okay, and they've been right. They've been right. They've never seen they've never seen a market fall 5% or go limit down in a day. Like, yeah, which I think the US limit down is 5%, is it? And
No,
then they
well,
reopen.
we did see that through COVID. I think certainly we would have seen massive selling, but that's only, was that 19 or 21?
That was 19. So okay, so you're talking maybe 7 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
which is fine. But if you had taken the trading strategy for the past 7 years of just buying the dip, okay, so up it goes, falls 1%, buy the dip. Up it goes, falls 1%, buy the dip. You're absolutely perfect. And I'm just wondering that with the Bitcoin there, the way that over half the people are now in an unrealized loss stage, if this happens in the real market, you're going to have that same, because if that same strategy has worked, okay, you're not going to doubt it. You're just going to say, okay, S&P, like the S&P is currently down 0.4%, right? I guarantee there's people in there saying this is perfect. They just give me 0.4%, and they're going to be probably right,
Mm.
because we got like non-farm payrolls in 3.5 hours. They're probably going to be right. It's probably going to go back up again, and they're going to say thanks, thanks very much. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I look, I see what you're saying, and I would agree with you. You know,
we've just been wrong by not doing it.
no, you see, but that's what I was saying to you last week or whatever, or the week before. We're talking about, you know, if you break down the S&P or the Nasdaq, and the amount of stocks that are, say, making highs, and the amount of stocks that are just in a downtrend or going nowhere, you know, there's not many. I think it was a 20 out of 500 were making
25,
new highs.
25 stocks in the S&P represents 41% of the S&P value.
No, but only, I think recently there's only 20 of them are making new highs as we're making new highs, and they're saying that's kind of the situation around the .com crash, you know. And
well, I could definitely
if there is a bit of a pullback, I mean, obviously, and certainly the certain semiconductors, AI, you know, some of these companies could fall 30% in a couple of days. It wouldn't make a difference year on year because they're up.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at Dell, I mean, what's Dell up? I mean, it's Dell up 300% of the year. You know, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But, so if it falls 25%, 30%, it's not. You know, realistically, it makes no odds if you're long it from quite a bit, right?
Okay, but let's just talk about market frenzy for a bit. The CEO of Nvidia came out and he said that the next $1 trillion company is starts with an A. Anyway, that company rallied 20, or those shares rallied 25% that afternoon. Like that afternoon. Like this isn't something. This is just, as we were talking about the gamma squeezes with the option sellers. This is just, I just think we're in this. I'm gonna say frothy, right? And I just think this. No, but it is, and I think this Bitcoin is just sort of opened my eyes just a little bit to what's going on. And I think if I was to, I've got 50% of my portfolio done now, right? And I think what I'm going to do is that I'm going to look at the index to buy. Okay, I don't think I'm going to go individual stocks, but I can't see value anywhere. Okay, I just think, sorry, there's value in the old-fashioned sector stuff, right? But there's nothing that's going to say to me that two things can happen. The S&P can go to 8,500, and it can do it in 2 weeks because it did 7 to 7,500 in 3 weeks, right? Not a problem, because if you have if you have the passive buyers and you have everyone just buying into it, that could happen. However, on the other side, and I'm looking at ASML down 4% here, that if the other part happens, then it behaves like Bitcoin behaved, then I really do expect maybe a 10 to 15% pullback, which is fine. I'm actually, and that's not that's not panic. That's just bringing things back down to their averages. Like it's nothing.
Yeah,
I'm not talking like I'm not talking market crash here. You got some morons out there, the usual, say, "Oh, we're 85% crash and stuff." Grow up. There's too much. There's too many people trading now, and there's too much money gone into it. But there will be one day, and I don't know when a buyer will say, "You know what? I'm not part of this. I'm out."
Mm-hmm.
You think?
Well, look, I mean, you see, even you mentioned ASML down 4%. I mean, I still think it's up 4% on the week. And that's my my point there. That so it falls 6 and pulls back 2. And no matter what index you get yourself into, if it's a defensive index, if there's an overall market sell-off, you're going to get hit. That's just the way. And then whether there is value in the AI sector, does that bounce back? And ahead of everything else. Like I think the big sort of move, or you can see it in your information there. You have the consumer discretionary down 4%, and they were they were talking about consumer spending.
I don't know if you saw that Lululemon's results came out last night.
They weren't great, were they? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, that stock is down 12%, but it was down 12% last night. But the cautionary thing they were saying is that they've absolutely downgraded forecast for the next quarters. They're saying that the consumer is tired, or tired is a wrong phrase, but that's a huge company. That's like,
again, is he tired? You're dead right. It's the wrong phrase. It's like, I mean, am I broke or am I tired? You know what I mean? The consumer, like I'm not of course I'm a consumer, but I'm not really a consumer. I mean,
or maybe
a consumer. But people do consume stuff, and Lululemon would be a lot of, say, guys and girls, going to the gym, getting the best gear, the latest gear, and
like that to me again is just something else. That's nothing to do with the AI sector, obviously, but it's to do with the consumer, and it's kind of like if the consumer is also trading and they're tapped out, is it not? Well, you know what? I'm going to take a bit of money out of the stock market so I can live because I've had such a great run.
But I mean, a lot of the, again, and I know people, a lot of these people won't have money in the stock market. Some might, maybe in America they do, but again, I don't think so. I think a lot of people that, a lot of guys and girls that maybe have money in the stock market have it there because they believe in sort of investing and compounding and making, growing money. Yeah. Your real consumers, they believe in consuming. They're not sitting there going, I'll buy this, invest in that, and moving forward. Like, I mean, I know people that spend money. They just spend money because they want to spend money, and they're not buying stocks and shares. They may in a pension of some sort.
They're buying like whatever gym membership or something.
Yeah, well, yeah. So,
I just think that it's. Well, what about summer? What about just waiting for the end of summer? What about doing that?
What a wait until the end of summer.
Like, do you have any market fears at the moment?
No, well, that's why I said last week I was going to sell Puma 50% because sell in May towards the end. I kind of thought it would stay elevated during the day. It didn't. It ground down, and Monday was a bank holiday in Ireland, not in Europe. Tuesday, Monday ground down. Tuesday ground like here, Now
did you sell it?
No, I didn't. No.
Oh, Jesus! No. I was going to put your realized P&L in here.
No. I mean, no. I didn't. But see, the thing is, it's in the pension. I didn't do it in a trading book, so like as you see it, but I think it got hit 20. It hit 26.40 off 30.40. So $4 divided by 30.40 is 13-14%. I don't know, whatever, So, but I probably would have rebought it, yeah. Or knowing me, I would have missed it anyway. So no, I didn't. But again, the story is still the same. But then you look at Lululemon and now they're not, I think, just in the running stuff. They're in more that the gear and all the different
all the fashion.
Yeah. So look, I mean, there probably was value in selling it up there. So if it heads back up that way again, near that area, I'll sell half it, But otherwise, it's in the pension, and I don't need the money, and I'm not. You know what I mean? It's not like.
But also, it's the actual story is still there. That's the main thing, It's not like it's what's the phrase? it's not like the story is gone. Okay, which is
No,
speaking.
stop.
Well, speaking of stories, Vivendi. Did you see what happened during the French courts during the week?
Now, I don't think so. It's the UMG was your man Aikman is selling UMG. So
Yeah.
your man Aikman now has sold his whatever 4 or 5%, maybe it's higher, stake in UMG. He's out.
Right.
He's gone. He said, right, that's it. Do your own thing for now, because Bolloré thinks that they can just go and do that themselves, and maybe they can, but that's a long, that's going to take a little while anyway, and that's separate to the court case that's going on.
Well, I'd say, also, Bill Ackman's not stupid. So I'd say that he's also,
he was trying to do a deal where it wasn't a great cash and share deal, right?
Sure, but he's actually
them, so they sold it. So right, that's it, lovely, we're gone, no issue.
Yeah,
I think they still made money out of the whole thing. So,
oh yeah, of course, but he's shown them the sort of way out for UMG as well. So I presume they're actually looking at it now and saying, okay, let's just.
They probably are. I mean, and again, I think the whole premise there was UMG relative to its peers was sort of undervalued, but that doesn't mean the peers weren't overvalued, And I mean, again, would that be some kind of consumer discretionary area too? Where they make their money and people logging on and buying music, and I suppose music rights are different in so many different ways. But anyway, yeah. So Vivendi, I think today though it's all right.
It's all right. Yeah, it's kind of
I mean, it's off 6-7% off
the
high, but
yeah, like you two are still ahead of the curve anyway. You're 3.45 versus 3.17. I know Iberdrola is not particularly great, but
Iberdrola again is something I have there, and then Accenture. There's another one. Fucking Accenture. It's a Monday. Monday was up 5%, and so it was up 10% for me.
Yeah,
and I put an order in to sell half. Not that much above the market.
You and your orders. So why don't you just hit the bid, man? What's the bid?
Because it was in an uptrend, and I kind of going, I thought maybe they just squeeze it up into the close, and that was it. Anyway, so then of course it drops 10% from there. So it's like, well, thanks. Do you
ever wonder? I used to always wonder: I sometimes look around me and say, is there some camera looking at me and say there he is, putting the order in, right? That's the high, that's the low. Make sure he doesn't get filled.
I know. In fairness, it was. I mean, I could have brought it down a little bit lower, but I didn't expect to see it up 5%, and that was following a 5% move higher over the last few days before it. So and the same thing for me. It's in the pension thing. If it stays there for a while, I've no real issue with it. Like so, but then just I suppose when it comes down a few days later, down 10%, and you can see the same was with Cognizant. It was up. That
was well up.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. They both. I think it came at 7 or 8% off the highs as well. So.
I think as you pointed out, they seem to have an inverse correlation to the AI markets. So
well, yes, but on Monday. That's the thing. They went up 5%. I think they both went up roughly 5%, and I think the AI stuff was up as well.
Okay.
So it could have just been a bit of a squeeze. It could have been money coming in, and I could have, I suppose, if that was the first day of the month, maybe this repositioning coming in. You wouldn't know.
And I have to say, I was actually laughing at you that I bought LVMH for 487.45, and it traded. I'm telling you this, 6.8% lower. It traded during the week and back up again. So I think I'm going to take your attitude of.
Well, in fairness, you were buying LVMH there. We talked about that last week, and I was going, really? Because you see, again, we talk about consumer spending might be an issue. Now, I know LVMH doesn't target lower levels, consumers. But it still relies on that whole thing of consumption. Relies on people maybe demonstrating their wealth, and if the consumers in general, if you go back to times after the crash, 7, 8, 9, 10, people weren't demonstrating wealth because that didn't really seem like the right thing to do. So I have LVMH in the pension portfolio, and look again, I think it's around where I bought it X amount of years ago. No, maybe 2 years ago. And of course, it did make a run 25% higher, and I didn't sell it because
Well, I think it's actually, I think the reason they made a run up during the week from the 6% lower was because of the end of the war and obviously duty free. So what's your like? What is your opinion of the markets these days?
I mean, I think consumer spending is a big thing. You said non-farm payrolls today. You know, I think that consumption is going to be the big problem going forward. You know.
Well, I think there's a difference between the economy and the stock market. You know, it's like I think you make a mistake. I always think if you think they're both the same, you know, they're not. And I think that you know, I just think it's look. I hear everyone saying it's toppy, and when everyone says it's toppy, that usually means it's going to go up another 10% because everyone says it's toppy. You know, but look, I'm sort of, to be honest, I'm sort of confused at this level here. As Warren Buffett said, if you're not willing to, if you're not willing to sell it, if you're thinking of selling it, then you shouldn't be buying it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, and it is actually true. Like if you're saying to yourself, "My God, this thing's a sell," then as a trader, you got to say to yourself, "Well, then why the hell am I buying?" You know? And but you could be wrong. You know? And I think you're like I think your portfolio strategy is very good. You're in the ones that are just gonna, even if we do sell off 10%.
In general, so I have quite a few stocks, and in general, they tend to be defensive.
Yeah,
they have
and
been
it's got
defensive.
Yeah, and I think if we
I mean,
do
some
get
of
a
them
sort
done
of
okay.
10%,
I mean, but you know, no.
do you
But
have a way
I'll
of
have a look and see.
do you have a way of buying stocks in downtrends? Do you just say, "Ah, hell, go for it," or do you say to yourself, "Okay, look, I'm looking at this downtrend. If it goes 10% higher or something like that, then so say Boston Scientific is trading $50 from 100. Do you say to yourself, right, if it gets to 60, I'm going to buy it, and then say Boston Scientific goes to 30 or to $40, then you drop the 60 down to 50, and so on and so forth. Is that or do you just say, look, I just think it's good
No,
value?
well, I think there sometimes if there is, like, say it's trading 50 and it goes up to 55 on news, and then for some reason you see that this is the problem with it. If it's good news, it can just keep going. And sometimes in the past, it might go to 55, you might get a chance to buy it at 53 or something, you know, on a marginal pullback because you're buying it on the news. But it's hard then sometimes to chase it higher if it's really good news, like if something turns around. But I can't see something like big blue chip companies don't typically just turn around like that and go straight higher. Even though, what's that one I missed? Universal Health, missed that one. Did that, but no, like it's hard to know if you're looking for certain. Maybe obviously the PE ratios come in. You know, the growth prospects still aren't too bad, or you know, maybe that sector's been beaten up for certain reasons, and maybe the sector itself is due to turn around. Maybe, you know, we're talking about consumer spending. You know, if you look at the luxury sector, we talked about that. I mean, if the war ends and if say we open up with China and for some reason the Russian issue with the Ukraine is resolved, you know, that changes a lot of things. That changes that whole sector, right, and many other sectors. There's a real rebalancing. So
also when people buy stuff like that, there are the profit takers. You know, there's somebody who will buy it for 50 and it'll go up 55, 56, or sorry, say it goes to 60 and then drops back down to 57, 55. There are the profit takers who will take 10%. You know what I mean?
Well, see, that's the thing. Like something like Boston Scientific, if for example, say it's found it's down 50% and it's found its level and it's hanging around. I mean, there might be plenty of 6 to 10% trades in there, right? That you're just doing that because BASF did that for a long time, and just you could be in and out. You know, it's not for some reason the market's not in love with it. It kind of goes up a bit. There's a share buyback thing, and then they smack it again. You know, and it's so there, you know, if it finds a level, you trade in there, and there is tradability. You know,
there was a trader, without saying his name, that we used to trade with, and his strategy was to wait for stock to fall approximately 80%. So he would basically have his algo will be looking for 80% drops in stock. So I don't know what time period, but he would pick the high. Sorry, the algo would pick whatever the high is, and he'd look at hundreds of stocks, and he'd wait for an 80% drop. Now, he would also have in the if you look at the distribution curve of a drop that drops 60%, what's called on the edges are called kurtosis. So that's when the stock just goes over 2 standard deviations, sometimes 3 standard deviations. I think 1 standard deviation, 67, obviously. So 80, you're up around 88 to 2. So you're up around maybe 1.8 when he gets the signal. And this is buying and selling. So he would then put a factor of time into it. So if it happens quickly or it happens over a period of time, like that Boston Scientific. But he used to trade them, and some would go bust. Fair enough. But then some but he's buying shares 80% lower, if you can look at it that way. Some will go bust, so he'd lose. So say he put $1,000 into each, and some will go from that 20% level down to zero. Well, hardly ever down to zero. But the others would go from that 20% up to 40% or 30%. So
well,
it was
even that you've seen that a lot of you. It's obviously hard to pick how much it goes down, but a lot of times if you were to buy it down 80%, there's a good chance it jumps 50% from that level. Yeah. Right, which is only bringing it back a small percent, but I mean,
I think that was
oversold level.
I think that was his theory, and so he'd have a fund. Like he used to look at hundreds of stocks, so he'd have a fund of maybe just 100,000, and so he divide the fund into 100 or 200, and that's what he do. He just wait, and so a very small percentage of the fund would be doing this stuff. Every part of the fund would be doing this, but some, as you say, would double in price, and the others would go bust. It was interesting. I don't know. It was love to know how he's doing now. I said, I hope that God he didn't short the ones that went 80% up.
Well, there you go. That. But then again, sometimes same thing. It's the same principle. A lot of times it goes up there, it's a big pullback, and then off you go.
Okay, look, I think you're right. I think I'm going to take a break from buying stocks, from buying just for a little bit. I'm very interested to see what happens the next month and a bit, and maybe into the end of summer.
Well, it's funny that, but the bond yields we touched on that a couple of weeks ago. The bond yields have come back a little bit, not much, but a little bit.
Where's the 10-year now?
So that story, the 10-year is about 4.45, 4.5. I have to check. I had it there earlier on.
Yeah.
Inflation.
It looks like the ECB is going to raise twice now this month.
Yeah, but I had a look at that as well. So I mean, I think they're only raising to 2.25.
That's right.
So if you think about it, they went up to was it nearly 4%, and then cut it to 2% because we can never make growth in Europe anyway. And now they're talking about with inflation. Oh yeah, but they obviously need to justify a role that they have. Let's move to 2.25. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So brilliant. And then I think the next one, you're right, there's a couple priced in, but that could be June and September, right? So you're only at 2.5% then. That's if inflation kicks in. I mean, that's not really going to stop any kind of inflation. Small increases. But look, I mean, it's halfway through the year. I would have thought that we wouldn't be making new highs. So you're into the summer now, and there's still the Iranian or the US-Israeli war, right? And then you've the Russian wars. 2 big wars going on. Whatever else is going on.
The Russian one is quite a big one, which hardly anyone's talking about, and it's the narrative is the Russians are furious. They're actually furious. That's the words they're using with what Europe is doing. Now this is I don't know if you ever read a book called The Guns of August. Do you ever read that book?
Guns of August.
Yeah.
No.
It's a fascinating book. It's about how the First World War developed, and if you think about the First World War, it's the trigger people always say is the assassination of the Archduke in Sarajevo. But what happened then is that after he was shot, that was the event. But then other events happened. So alliances started, manufacturing started, tit for tats started. Then the train started to move, and when the train started to move, it couldn't be stopped. So whatever Russia did when it invaded Ukraine, it absolutely broke UN law. Or what it did, it invaded another sovereign country, which you're absolutely not allowed to do. However, what's happening is now the Swedish are calling for the Russians to be banned from Europe, Russian tourists. The Germans are now selling weapons to the Romanians. So this is the type of Guns of August. Everyone's forgot about the first thing. And now the Russians are saying, St. Petersburg got bombed by drones. Now, bombed as in
there's a huge conference on there at the moment. Now, I'm not saying bomb like World War.
No, there was this certain oil targets, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of this is the guns of August. It's there's little things happening all the time, and then suddenly people forget the first reason, and suddenly you're at war. And apparently the Russians are just absolutely furious. Now, I obviously hope nothing bad happens, but that'd be.
Yep.
So we're gonna wrap up the podcast there, Jeff. Thanks very much for your insights for the week. We shall speak again on Monday. We were supposed to do oncopeptides today, which we're not going to do till Monday because John is away and he is the man that is promoting this, so to speak. So
there you go, up today.
Up today, is it? Okay.
Well,
we will speak
in a downtrend up today.
Up today. Okay, we shall speak on Monday for that because I said I'd record that with John. So hopefully you're available as well. Okay, so we'll talk to you then. All right.
All right, Phil. Okay.
Cheers, amigo. Thanks.
Bye. Bye.